Sopna drove through the busy city streets, her mind racing with anticipation and unease. BK, her friend and occasional business associate, had given her an address and instructed her to meet a man named Hemant Kumar there. She knew little about Hemant, only that he was a close friend and fierce business rival of BK's. The secretive nature of the meeting filled her with apprehension. She pulled up to the sprawling bungalow at the address BK had provided. As she stepped out of the car, a distinguished-looking man in his early 40s emerged from the front door and strode towards her purposefully. He gripped her hand firmly in greeting, his eyes gleaming with an eagerness she found unsettling. "You must be Sopna," he said.
"I'm Hemant."
"BK told me to expect you. Please, come inside." Sopna followed him into the lavishly decorated home, taking in the fine art adorning the walls and the sleek, modern furnishings. Something about the eerie quiet of the place made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. "Is no one else home?" she inquired, trying to keep her tone casual. "I've given the staff the day off," Hemant replied breezily. "I wanted us to have total privacy to get to know each other better. Can I offer you a drink?" Sopna politely declined as Hemant poured himself a generous whiskey. Her instincts told her to remain clear-headed. Keen to get down to business, she asked, "So what exactly did BK tell you about the purpose of my visit today?" Hemant flashed her an enigmatic smile over the rim of his glass. "He said you would be the most exquisite birthday gift I could imagine. And I must say, he wasn't exaggerating." His brazen appraisal made Sopna's skin crawl, but she maintained her professional composure. "I think there may be some misunderstanding about the nature of my work," she said coolly. "I'm an events coordinator and occasional personal assistant to BK. I presumed he wanted me to help with some business matter involving you too." Hemant chuckled, but there was a hard edge to it. "Don't be coy. I know you're one of the most sought-after call girls in the city. Only the elite have access to you. BK wanted to give me a night with the best for my birthday." Sopna felt a flush of indignation. BK knew perfectly well she was no call girl. How dare he misrepresent her this way? Clearly some twisted game was afoot between the two men. She had to extract herself immediately. "I'm afraid BK has greatly misled you," she said, standing up. "I am not what you think I am, and I certainly won't be staying. I'll show myself out." "Not so fast," he growled, his jovial mask slipping. "BK promised me a night with you. You're not going anywhere until I get what I'm owed." Heart hammering, Sopna wrenched herself free and fled towards the door. Just as her fingers closed around the handle, a blood-curdling scream rent the air from somewhere upstairs. She froze. Hemant looked as shocked as she felt. Sopna raced up the winding staircase, Hemant on her heels. She flung open door after door of empty guest rooms until she reached the last one at the end of the hall. What awaited them inside made her recoil in horror. There on the plush carpeted floor lay Hemant's prone form in a congealing pool of blood. Standing over him holding a dripping knife was none other than BK, a manic gleam in his eyes. "What have you done?" Sopna gasped. Her mind reeled, trying to make sense of the nightmare before her. BK's teeth flashed in a feral grin. Just taking care of business. Hemant was becoming a major problem. Luring him with the promise of you and then eliminating him was the perfect plan. As BK advanced on them with the knife, Sopna spotted an antique vase on a nearby shelf. In one swift motion, she grabbed it and smashed it over BK's head, sending him crumpling to the ground. "Come on, we have to get out of here," Sopna urged the trembling Hemant. She took his hand and together they fled down the stairs and out into the night air. In the safety of her car speeding away from the house, the horrible truth crashed over Sopna. BK had used her as a pawn in his psychotic plot to murder Hemant. By having her show up right when he committed the crime, he'd planned to frame her for the killing. If she hadn't managed to overpower him, she'd likely be behind bars this very moment. BK's betrayal stung bitterly. She'd considered him a friend, had trusted him despite the unsavory side of his business dealings. Now he'd proven himself capable of cold-blooded murder. She glanced over at Hemant shaking in the passenger seat and felt a pang of sympathy. He was just as much of a victim of BK's madness as she was. "Don't worry," she reassured him. "We'll go straight to the police. BK won't get away with this." As they walked into the authorities, Sopna prayed the truth would come to light. She and Hemant were innocents who had stumbled into a deadly trap. Surely the investigation would uncover the depths of BK's psychosis and his elaborate plan to frame her. In the months that followed, Sopna and Hemant bore witness against BK as the full extent of his crimes came to light. And though the shadows of that nightmarish evening at Hemant's house would likely always haunt them, they took solace in the fact that justice had prevailed. Sopna vowed to be more cautious about the company she kept moving forward. One could never know what darkness lurked behind a familiar face. The ensuing investigation and trial was a long road for both Sopna and Hemant. Having been unwitting pawns in BK's twisted murder scheme, they now found themselves as the star witnesses and victims in the sordid case. Both grappled with immense guilt that their connection to BK had enabled his madness to thrive for so long. As unsettling details from BK's past emerged, painting a picture of callous ruthlessness hidden beneath his charismatic facade, Sopna berated herself for ignoring the red flags in his character. How could she have allowed herself to trust, even befriend, someone capable of such wanton manipulation and violence? In time, she came to understand that BK's smooth exterior had fooled many, not just her. Hemant struggled with similar feelings, having viewed BK as a friend and close confidant for years. The betrayal cut deep for them both. With BK's scheme exposed, the authorities slowly unraveled his wider web of criminal activities. Sopna and Hemant provided vital testimony detailing the events leading up to that fateful evening, as well as insight into BK's long rivalry with Hemant. Piece by piece, a picture took shape of BK's plot to eliminate his greatest business adversary and frame Sopna for the crime. The reveal of his true, monstrous nature sent ripples through their social and business circles. Many who had known him for years were left reeling, unable to reconcile the ruthless killer with the affable man they thought they knew. Old interactions were cast in a chilling new light. The thought of rubbing elbows with the elite strata that had shielded a man like BK now repulsed her. Let them have their intrigues and deadly rivalries. She wanted no part of it. She threw herself into her legitimate work as an event manager, determined to rebuild a life truly of her own making, beholden to no one. In reflecting on her time with BK, she saw how little by little, he had manipulated her into the gray areas of business, making her complicit in matters she couldn't fully square with her conscience. Never again would she compromise herself so. As for Hemant, he surprised many by extending a hand of friendship to Sopna in the aftermath of the trial. Having walked through the valley of BK's hell together, they shared a singular understanding of the scars it left. Their occasional meetings for coffee or a sympathetic ear evolved into a deep, platonic bond, one of the few positive things to emerge from the wreckage. In processing the surreal nightmare they had endured, Sopna and Hemant found themselves grappling with existential questions. What forces shaped a man like BK? How could they reckon with having aided, however unintentionally, in furthering the endeavors of a brutal killer? Did the good they put into the world now, after the fact, make any difference in the karmic equation? There were no easy answers. Years later, long after the media circus had tired of the scandalous case, Sopna found she could only take life day by day. She tried to embrace the simple joys where she found them and to treat others with compassion, knowing every soul fought hidden battles. Her experience had made her kinder, wiser, warier, all in the same breath. Most days, what had transpired at Hemant's house felt like a distant bad dream. And then Sopna would catch herself scanning a crowd for BK's face or jolt awake in a cold sweat with the sensation of his hands at her throat. The scars might fade, but she would carry them always. Such was the toll of having gazed into an abyss of human darkness and lived to tell the tale. With time, the sharp edges of the trauma smoothed, bit by bit. Sopna built a thriving solo enterprise and Hemant regained his standing in the business world. Each forged ahead in building a life to be proud of, determined to rise from the ashes of BK's destruction. Their friendship endured, a port of understanding in the occasional storm. They alone could relate to the particular swirl of emotions the ordeal had unleashed, the residual fear that could still seize you in a shadowy parking lot, the fury at having been so grievously used, the hollow sorrow of a trust decimated, but also the hard-won celebration in having survived, in having stopped a monster before his evil could spread. On the anniversaries of that terrible night, they made a point to meet, to toast their endurance and remember the lessons learned, to affirm the hope that people were more good than bad, that the light could prevail, because in a world where wickedness could wear such a convincing mask, what else could you do but strive every day to make your own corner of it brighter? This vow they shared between them, as sure as the horrors they had faced. It was a conviction hard-earned in blood and tears, one they would carry in their bones always.